Welcome to Cooper Talk. I'm your host, Steve Cooper, and remember, I'm only as hip as my guest. I got to tell you something, people. I was watching one of my favorite shows, Hotel Cocaine, the other night, which Yul Vasquez has been on the show, and he's a great guy. And I saw this gentleman, and I'll be honest, people, I'd been watching the Phillies games earlier in the day, and I had a few beers, and I had a little buzz going, and I thought it was Charlie Slater at first. I was like, is that Charlie Slater? And I said, no. And I said, oh my God, it's Keith Reza's friend, Geoffrey Blake. And Geoffrey's been in so much stuff, and I'm so glad to have him on the show. And it's not Jeff Blake, the quarterback for the Jets and the Bengals. It's Geoffrey Blake. And how you doing, Geoffrey?
I'm good, man. Yeah, spelled differently. Jeff Blake of the Bengals. Quarterback, and that I actually, that puts us in the same age range that I actually know that. Because not to say mediocre, layman, hardworking quarterbacks are not necessarily always something people remember them. But Jeff Blake in particular was a solid quarterback.
Very good college player. I think
great, but solid.
I think he played for. I'm an Eagles fan. I think he played for the Eagles for a little bit, but he played for a lot of teams. But I just thought of that today.
My son, I've adopted the Eagles lately. I come from, my entire lineage and family come from Pennsylvania. So, and now my son, my oldest son, I have two sons. My oldest son is going to Drexel. So he's in Philly. We go to Philly a lot now. And my cousin Steve grew up in Swarthmore, and my whole family's from Swarthmore. So I have adopted the Eagles as my team. And that was rough last year. It was looking good for a while, and then towards the end of the season, I almost had to remove the bumper sticker because I was getting razzed.
I'm going to tell you something. When I lived in Burbank, I would go walk down to Black Angus, the Bullseye Bar, or Gordon Bierce, or Volcano to watch the Eagles. And they came on at 10 a.m. And I always have to walk that shame back because I had Giants fans and Cowboys fans going, Philly sucks, blah, blah, blah. And then when me and my wife moved back, they won the Super Bowl, and it was so great to experience with all us long-suffering fans that it was in sports. And I've seen all of the teams win at Philadelphia. It was probably the highlight of me being a sports fan.
There you go. Yeah, well, Phillies look pretty good, so.
So let's get started. You've been acting. I want to start off first of all.
Yes.
Acting, auditions.
Yes.
You're a guy who's been acting for a long time. You went to college. You were trained. I always love to talk to actors. Do you like self-tape or do you like in person? Because I get from your generation, I get different answers, but most tend to be like when they audition, they want to be in the room.
Yes. And it'll be a twofold answer. I probably, yes, I do come from in the room. I do miss the collaborative aspect of being able to work with the director in particular. And if it's television and there's a showrunner involved, I enjoy the creative process of being able to, do your take and then work together in the room on their vision and how you could suit their vision with your given talent. There's also something wonderful about, if you have a wonderful supportive casting director and you're in the room with a Sharon Bialy or a John Papsadera or a April Webster, just to name a few, Ellen Chenoweth if you're on the East Coast. There's something to be said about, an actor's job is to connect, and connecting and being spontaneous and being moment by moment by moment to moment to moment. Your talent lies in your choices, and those choices live change when you are in person. And it's the change and the excitement of discovery that I feel sets the actor who ends up ultimately getting the job usually is the person who's made some sort of choice, something that has elevated the material to something that is very unique to them. That is much more easily conveyed in the room. Now, I've grown to love self-tapes in that I have a different approach to self-tapes. A lot of generations in my generation, as you said, kind of dread self-tapes, kind of the get off my lawn kind of thing. This is new to us. But when I mentor young actors, and I mentor a lot of young actors, a lot of them get very attitudinal. I can't believe they're making me do a self-tape. Blah, 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 blah. Why can't they just look at my reel? All that kind of stuff. And I look at that as a different way. I think, to me, the self-tape is actually the last time as an actor I'm actually going to get to play the part exactly how I want to play it. Okay. So that will be the purest form of how I envision that character, how I would like to play that character. There's no, and from that point on, even when I get the job, it will not be that it's pure, because I'll now have the director's input, I'll have the studio's input, I'll have the writer's input, I'll have the other cast members' input, all that. So it becomes a collaboration. But on the self-tape, it's 100% yours. You get to own it. You get to choose the take. You get to choose the lighting. You get to choose the wardrobe. You make your own little movie, in essence. So at first I was somewhat resistant to it, but now I've actually kind of grown to love it. And I've grown to love, establishing my space, establishing the backdrop, establishing, and it's become its own artistic adventure.
Now, you've had tons of credits. You've been an actor your whole life, so you know your craft. And when you said you mentor younger actors, do you think younger actors, and maybe you do, when you do a self-tape, do you ever get in your own head and say, this isn't good enough, this isn't good enough, this isn't good enough? Or when do you know when it's, because you can shoot as many self-tapes as you want, but when do you personally know when it's good? You just have a inner feeling and you go, nailed it?
Yeah, I don't, it's interesting. As you said, I've done it my whole career, my whole life. And my wife, who shoots them with me a lot, she's a very established writer, also was a wonderful actor back in her day. When she chose to transition to writing. But she is a great director and a great critic, but she gets really mad in that the fact is that, and this is not egotistical, I happen to be really good at auditioning, and I happen to be very instinctual at auditioning. I can read, I drives people crazy. I can read a script and I can do it right over the first time. I can even do it cold almost, because I've done it for so long and I know my instrument so well. I know when I tell young actors, don't do it too many times. It'll get stale. There'll be something. If you can't get it in the first 3 to 5 takes, then there's something wrong, because it means you haven't prepared. It means you don't tape until you've done your prep work. I understand. Do your work and then tape. Don't try to do your work while you're taping. So no, it's not a problem for me. There are certain things that I know are in my wheelhouse that I can, do with my eyes shut. And then there's other things that are more challenging, of course, but I'm a character actor. So, to me, I create different characters, and I really do put, a lot of effort into really becoming that person. Whether that be from the voice, the look, the accent, the dialect. If you look at my resume, and it's certainly late, I've played a lot of real people. I've played a lot of historical people. I've played a lot of characters that are based on, like I played John Ford in Midway. And that was a joy as a character actor, because I got to look at all the film of him from when they came back and all the documentaries that have been done on John Ford, and to become him. And that's always a thrill, and that's done through research. I remember Roland Emmerich saying to me, well, what I found fascinating is I saw, thousands of actors for this part, and John Ford was famous for either having a pipe in his hand or a cigar in his hand at all times, if not a glass of whiskey with it, even when he was directing. And Roland said, and he had a very specific accent, because he was raised by Irish immigrants, but he was raised in Maine. So he had a Maine Eastern Seaboard accent with the influences of Irish parents, with also a lifelong of drinking whiskey and smoking cigars and pipes and things. So he had a specific voice, very raspy. And so in listening to that, Roland said, well, what I'm always shocked by is you were the only actor, the only one of thousands of actors I saw for this part that had a pipe and had the accent. So that's where the character actor, and I happen to be a member of the Actors Studio, so there is the method involved and all that, which some people get completely confused and don't know what the method really is. They have an idea of what it is, and they usually disparage it, but that's not what it is. So the ability to be able to do the research, but that leads into, I have done all that work before I do the many, many takes.
Now, let me ask you.
So I have a good idea of what I'm going to do.
But let me ask you this. You do all the research.
Yes.
And when you play a real character, like John Ford, do you ever worry that, I mean, this is why you're an actor, but a lot of people will just go and basically do an impression of him.
No, just the opposite. No, you can't. You can't do an impression, because then it is an impression. It still basically comes down to, what does the character want? How is he going to get it? What is in his way of getting it? And then 100%, the main thing that young actors forget to do, you do all the research, you do all of it, whatever it is. But then once you are in front of the camera or on the Broadway stage or the theater, you let it all go. And you are, other than the accent, of course, but you've done it so much, it's second nature, that you have to just let it go and be spontaneously in the moment.
Okay, so what got you into acting? I know you've been acting for a long time. What was, like, what kind of kid were you? Were you an athlete? Were you
Yes.
I
I was a highly ranked tennis player. I come from athletes. My grandfather and my father my grandfather is considered the greatest the Bear Bryant of lacrosse. He's considered the greatest lacrosse coach ever. He coached the one time there was an Olympic team and got a gold medal in Berlin for coaching lacrosse. My father, they're both Avery Blake Sr., Avery Blake Jr. My father, Avery Blake Jr., to this day is considered one of the greatest lacrosse players ever, under his father. Hall of Fame of lacrosse, both of them. They both played on a very famous, my father played on, my grandfather coached a very famous NC2A lacrosse all-star team that featured my father and Jim Brown, the running back, the Cleveland Browns running back. So I came from the discipline of athletics. I didn't play lacrosse because I was growing up in the West Coast. There wasn't youth lacrosse at that point. My father wasn't around much anyway. So that discipline. Then as a tennis player, highly ranked, highly decorated, highly recruited, I was very dramatic on the tennis court. John McEnroe was my idol.
I thought Alien Nastase.
Yeah, Alien Nastase, I ball boyed for him once. So very much that fed. And then I started doing a little bit of my first time I ever know. I always ask this to young actors too when I do things like this. The first when I knew I wanted to be an actor was very young. When I was 5 years old, 6 years old, somewhere in that SAG year, I got cast as the manger boy, the little manger boy in the Christmas play at the Methodist Church. I think it was the last time I ever was the lead, actually. It's the last time I ever was the title character, before my character actor career. He was above the title, for sure. But what I realized is I love the attention. I love the people. I could capture people's attention by what I was doing. I could get them to laugh. I could get them to clap. That sunk in very early. And then what sealed the deal was Mrs. Gilliland's sugar cookies. She made me a batch of her own sugar cookies just for playing the manger boy. And I was sold that this is what I wanted. Literally, that's what I wanted to do. While I was playing tennis and I was living in Northern California, I basically discovered a place called the American Conservatory Theater, ACT. And there was a famous director who ran ACT named William Ball on directing, one of the great books ever written about theater directing. And I would sneak into classes there. I would take Bart over from the suburbs, and I would sneak into classes there and take. Nobody knew the difference. They just thought I was there and took the classes and acted like I belonged there. So I started taking classes at ACT. Then I was discovered cheating, and not that I got caught by William Ball. And he says to me, well, I'm doing this production of Equus. And how old are you? And I said, I'm 16. And he goes, well, Alan happens to be 16. Would you like to play it? and that took some figuring out. And I ended up that was my journey. I got my equity card. I got blah blah blah. And from that point on, I became an actor. And
what pushed you down to Southern California? How did you end up coming?
Well, tennis, but because I got into Juilliard, but my parents didn't want me to be an actor. My parents didn't even audition for Juilliard. Again, I had snuck into the league auditions in San Francisco at ACT, and they wouldn't pay for it. They wouldn't pay for Juilliard. So then I shifted and discovered that USC had a fantastic theater program. I'd auditioned for that as well, and they only select 15 for their 20 for their BFA program. Got into that program. It was actually a Juilliard alumnus who was running the program, Duncan Ross. So it all worked out. And I do wonder someday what would have my career been if I had gone to Juilliard. But I can't complain. And in my class at USC, none of us graduated. It was the height of teen movies. It was the height of John Hughes and all those. So we all got jobs. And it was me and Forrest Whitaker and Eric Stoltz and Tate Donovan. And, it was and then we all, once we started getting jobs, we all found, through osmosis, we found an acting teacher. Her name was Peggy Fury. And she and her husband, William Traylor, ran a place called the Loft Studio. And it was an intensive actor studio-based training program that you had to be invited to go to. It was 4 days a week, and then fifth day of the week you did your scene work. 2 teachers, 2 days a week you did scene work. The other 2 days you did exercise work and improvisation and those kind of things. And you had to be invited. And in the class that we were in, we were all in our 20s, or early 20s. And not to ding, 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 but name drop, it was like me, Sean Penn, Chris Ben Glover, Nicolas Cage, Meg Ryan, Meg Tilly, Michelle Pfeiffer, Kira Sedgwick, Tom Shadyac, who became a comedy director. It was even more. I can name even more. Kevin Bacon. There were so many people in that class. And we all went on to have, pretty incredible careers.
When you were in the class,
yeah.
was there a camaraderie or was there a competition? Because when we're young and we're upstart, we get a little cocky, and you sit there and you want to shine. But what was it like? Because did you guys have a good camaraderie?
There was always both. There's always both with actors. Peggy certainly wouldn't. She wouldn't stand for competitive in any way, shape, or form. And she also wouldn't stand for laziness. If she didn't think you were working hard, she said there'd be somebody who would want your spot, and she'd kick you out quickly. So, all those people have had impact on my career going forward, so there's a generosity there for sure. The work was, it was stellar. I mean, Sean Penn is intense. He just is. But to watch him work at that age, he was phenomenal. His brother Chris was a phenomenal actor. And the difference between Chris and Sean was just discipline. One worked harder than the other. And Chris was probably even more naturally talented. And then, it was kind of a little quick slice of time. Place, but we've all stayed in it. We've all gone off to do good things and do good work, and we are given a work ethic. And and then some of from that point on, the only other mentor I had was a guy named Larry Moss, and he is a mentor.
Now, what were some of the roles that you enjoyed in your earlier career? You look at IMDb, and it's like you've been on everything. And I did caught my eye was that you were on 6 episodes of Scary Shanley, and
yes.
I'd interviewed David Duchovny, and we talked about him when he used to be on Larry Sanders.
They were very good friends.
Yeah, and they said. So tell me, what was that like? I mean, what was that? What was that? One of your first recurring roles?
I was actually a regular.
Okay.
In the first season. And then both Alan Zweibel and I, basically, I was starting to get some attention in the feature world, and we had a conversation. It's like, well, yeah, thank you, I love it. I'm not really being utilized here on the show. I'm kind of a one joke, handsome swinging single friend of Gary's that shows up late for the show all the time. So I said, I'd be happy if you want that to recur and come back sometimes, but I don't want to be contractually binded anymore, so bound. So that was, but it was a great experience. What was interesting about it most when I look back on it was to see the reverence the comedians all had for Gary. And it was basically like comedy camp. They'd just come there all day and just hang out. There was a basketball court as part of the set. So they'd come and play basketball, and guys like Norm Macdonald, terrible basketball player. Oh, I can't believe I missed that. May he rest in peace. May Gary rest in peace. So that was that, and I was definitely the youngest. Not the youngest. There was another kid who played a kid, but I was pretty young. And then still to this day, one of the great experiences, and we all have maintained really close friendship, talking about the camaraderie, not the competition, was Young Guns. To this day, Dermot Mulroney is still one of my best friends. C. Thomas Howell was the best man at my wedding, stay gold. And Emilio is probably my dearest friend. So, particularly career-wise, I went on to do 4 or 5 movies with him as an actor and directing, and he's great. And Charlie's like the troubled little brother, and so yeah.
Was that when you were doing? I know you were Men at Work and you're a few other things. Does he call you like everyone says there's a whole process, but and people who don't know. Like in the 80s, and I just watched the Brat Pack movie because I turned 60. I was born in I turned 60.
I'm Brat Pack adjacent.
Yeah, and that was just my exactly. I was saying we were watching it, me and my wife, like, wait a second. I'm like, why isn't such and such on? Why is there, But Emilio Estevez was in so much stuff, so he had that pull. He was like a big star. So could he sit there when he would do a movie and just say, hey, you know what? I want Geoffrey, and just say to the casting director, if people go, put Geoffrey in. How did that work when you start a relationship? Because it's networking. That's what it is.
100% yes. First of all, casting directors don't have the ability to say yes or no. They are just, so it'd be more the studio or the producer. Yes, every movie I did with Emilio was created. The part was created for me, and I did Young Guns. I did Men at Work. I did a movie called Rated X, where I played he and Charlie's sexually ambiguous gay attorney, another true story, true person. And then I did Men at Work. I did another movie with Emilio called Nightbreaker with his dad. He did not direct it, he just acted in it. And I did The War at Home, which was based on a play, and played his sister's husband, Rene Estevez. So yeah, no, it's always with Emilio. It's always a call. That happens a lot, though. Even Hotel Cocaine, that was written for me. I did not audition. I had done. I think I might have auditioned for another role, but I had done Godfather Harlem for Chris Brancato,
which is a great show. It's funny. MGM Plus between the Cocaine, Godfather Harlem, and From, which is something that I never thought would be my genre, but they're all, that is like the network that people need to get because there's so much good in it. So you knew the showrunner from Godfather of Harlem? How did it happen that he got you in?
Yeah, I knew both showrunners. The creators of Godfather, Chris Brancato and Paul Eckstein. I knew Paul. I hadn't met Chris at that point. I knew Paul through theater, we both lived in Venice. We just known each other a long time. And again, that was a real guy, Kenny O'Donnell, chief of staff for John F. Kennedy. So I went in, I auditioned with Victoria Thomas. I got the role, and then I got to become friends with Chris Brancato through the process. Then I think I auditioned for another part I taped for another part on Hotel Cocaine, and then he called me and said, "There's this other guy that I'm creating, and as soon as I saw you, I want to create it for you." Because, he goes, I need somebody who can just has the ability quietly to just cut Michael Chiklis off at the knees.
And you did. I was like, man, this guy's a jerk. Because it's funny, Chiklis.
Oh, yeah.
But Chiklis is just like he always is. Like in The Shield, he's a jerk, but you like him. Even in this show,
he's great. He's so great. He's so great, but he is, and so we enjoyed working together so much, and we're such opposite actors, which was wonderful.
Wait, when you say opposite actors, explain that.
Just the way we approach, the way he is bigger than life. He has a teacher named Howard Fine. He's just very big, and he's so experienced that, being number one on the call sheet all those years with the Shield and the commish. So he's got this very way of going about it. It's this very energetic, approachable, all right there in front of you, acting, right? Which then, being the comedian I am, I just made the choice to adapt to be just the opposite, to be very just cutting, real, and it became down to just what's called blood memory as an actor. We call it in the studio, actor's studio, blood memory. So Michael comes from, a very blue collar, very Irish, Polish, Boston. I mean, he's as Boston as you get. He's like, he literally calls Tom Brady Tommy, and they know each other. That's how Boston he is. And I'm come from, Swarthmore, Pennsylvania, upper education, erudite, lacrosse. My mother and father both went to Swarthmore. My grandparents went to Swarthmore. They were named Bunky and Tootsie as they were growing up. So I come from erudite, WASP, Ivy League, dare I say, entitled. And that's what makes for a really great dynamic on Hotel Cocaine. Because Michael leans into the blue-collar, working man, roll-up-your-sleeves, DEA guy, and I lean into the erudite prick, Ivy League, and Michael, like one day goes, "Are you upset with me?" I go, because I just did the scene. I think it was the first scene in the show where I basically just scammed him, and just like, that's it. My prick. I literally, and it scared the fuck out of my wife, I literally played my father. I'm even down to the glasses and the haircut. That is my father. My father was in, shall we say, intelligence. We should say that. So he was a member of the company. And Chris knows that. He goes, well, and even when I did, talked to her about my agent with my manager, she said, just play your father. And that's what I do. It's my not so good tribute to my father.
So I want to go back in your career because I did enjoy your scene. And you were in Deep Space Nine, and everyone says when you're on a Star Trek episode,
yes,
there's always going to be people that know like Spencer Garrett said, all these people. They know, and you probably run in auditions when you were younger.
Spencer's a dear friend of mine, and Spencer will tell you that. Spencer will tell you everything.
But exactly. He's done the show 5 times. I know. He said that when you do a Star Trek, and Robert Picardo said this too, that people, the fans, embrace you, but they find out everything about your career and then go back and watch it. So, what was your experience?
2 shows I've been on that do that. Yes. And I still, to this day, even as I move, Star Trek people still find me. And I get my character's name is Arjun. And there's some game board out there. He's a character on some Star Trek game, the picture. So I get more like, could you please autograph the game card? I get invited every year, and I've never done it, to the Star Trek convention to go sign things. So yeah, it's a definitely a different fan base, so to speak. The only one that's just as intense is I'm the only actor who has the honor of having done both versions of Charmed.
Okay.
I was with the original Charmed and then the reboot Charmed. So the Charmers are pretty intense as well.
So let's talk about Forrest Gump. And
yes, it's the elephant in the room, right?
No, but it's one of those things. Well, you're acting and you're already established, and you go in and what I read was Forrest Gump wasn't a big money production, right? It wasn't. So how did that come about? Did you have to audition, and is that what started your relationship of being in movies with Tom Hanks? Because it seems like you must be a nice guy, because they go, hey, yeah, we want Blake in here, not the quarterback. Yes. We want that Geoffrey.
We'll talk about that. Yes, I auditioned. Yeah, Victoria Burrows was the casting director. Still is Bob's casting director to this day. And it was another one of those being in the room and having done research and enough, but it happened to fall in naturally to my own life experience, this character. Not the abusive part, no. But when I was growing up, and this is the true story I told Bob, when I was growing up, I lived in a suburban town in the East Bay, outside of Oakland. Hence the traveling to San Francisco we already talked about. But in my very suburban neighborhood, I was always a rebel and always counterculture and always tried to buck against it as much as I possibly could. So for our junior year in high school, so I'm 16 at this point, it was during an election, so we had to join, fictitiously, but we had to join a political party. Whether that was a young Republicans, John Birch Society, Young Democrats, whatever it was, you had to form. I decided to go against the grain, and I took Bart into Oakland, and I knocked on the door of the chapter, and I asked if I could join the Black Panthers. At the Black Panthers headquarters in Oakland. They laughed hysterically. Here's, white boy from the suburbs. I had long hair, though. I had the Bjorn Borg hair, and I tend to wear like purple pants with clear jellies.
And you had me at Bjorn Borg hair, okay? And at least you didn't say Venus Gerolitis hair.
There we go. Bjorn, I still have Bjorn Borg hair. I'm blessed with that, and I knew Venus as well. I had spent some time with him in the '80s. You know what that means. So I told Bob that story.
Did they let you join?
Yeah, of course. They loved it. I mean, obviously it was honorary or whatever, but they took me through the headquarters, everything, saw the pictures of Huey Newton and all the guys, everything. It was pretty cool. Angela Davis, they said, had just been there right before I had left. I wish I had met her. So I told him that story, which he found very amusing. And then we did the scene, and then next thing you know, I was flying to Washington, D.C. So
now, after that movie becomes a classic, wins the Oscar.
Yeah, of course.
Does that impact your career? Because I know sometimes movies do come out later, but does that sit there and go, we remember your role, you're in an Oscar-winning movie. It's like if you're a crappy reliever for a baseball team, but you're in a World Series winner, you will probably get a contract more than a crappy pitcher on a bad team. Right.
It was definitely has been always a gift to be in. It's been a gift to my entire career. It's easily recognizable, always, it saves me so much time in life, just like, because I've been in so much, but I'm a character, so I spend my day, I know the look, I know the glare, I know and then they're outward people they will come and approach and talk and things. Sometimes they think I just went to high school with them. But so yes, certainly it elevated my career. There's no doubt about that. It did put me in the A movie market. I mean, I went on to do 3 more movies with Bob and 3 movies with Ron Howard. And Ridley Scott. I mean, they say Hollywood's big. It's not. It's a very, very small. I mean, it's gotten bigger with Netflix and all that, but it's a small knit still club, so to speak.
Now, what was your relationship with Tom? Like, did Tom ask for you for movies, or how did that happen? Like, because you've been in a bunch of movies.
Yes, I don't. Tom is great. He just is, and I was close. Not close. Tom is Tom. He's Tom. I mean, he's the greatest guy. He's incredibly approachable. I had 2 relationships like that in Hollywood. I had that with Tom, and I had 2. Both happened to be in Apollo 13. Both with Tom and Bill Paxton. Both of them, I had I looked up to them in a brotherly kind of, bigger brother kind of way, idolized them in a kind of way, and just would model the way I approached people and the way that they approached people, the serious way they take the work and the way that they, approach their work and the seriousness and the affability, but the seriousness on a set. I learned a lot from both of them. So I asked Tom that once. They go, well, why is it? It seems that you don't have, I don't know, it's not a request, but that you like me in your movies. And he goes, it's very simple. And this wasn't arrogant at all. I knew exactly what he meant. He goes, because you make me better, and you know your lane. And what he meant by that, that's not an insult. What it meant, and this is all characters out there. When you're doing a movie with Tom Hanks or Jodie Foster or any of these megastar actors, your job is to make them better. Your job is to make their day better. And your job particularly is not to be their best buddy, not to want to hang out with them when they're trying to learn their lines around craft service. Boundary setting and knowing that your job is to support them, their job is to carry the movie.
Makes sense.
So,
I mean,
it's kind of the relief pitcher, but not a crap.
Right, exactly. Now, here's a question, because, you've worked with Ron Howard, you work with those Zemeckis, you work with some great directors. Break down some of what make them great directors. Like, what's the difference between Zemeckis and Howard? Is there just... Did they give you freedom, or what is it?
I would say for every great director, all great directors, and I've worked with a lot of them. And the difference between a great director and a good director and a meh director is preparation, 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 and preparation. Ron and Robert are both meticulously prepared. They have a vision of exactly what they want, and they are painstakingly driven to get what they want. 2 completely different personalities, and both of them are actors, directors. Ron, particularly because he was one, but Robert loves actors, and Robert gives you a lot of freedom. He wants you to improv. He wants you to create within the space, and then sometimes you have to be dead on for Robert. There's the scene in Contact where we're getting the message from space for the first time, and Jodie's out at the array, and then she's racing in the car, and I'm setting up all the arrays to try to from the Grand Central there to try to capture the alien while we can, and I'm moving all these dishes around. I'm going to 7 different computers. I'm sliding in a chair. I'm pushing this. I'm standing up. I must have had. I was tethered to the steady cam, so I must have had 18 marks I had to hit, and there's no cut. This is a 1. This has to play in 1. That's hard. So that's why a person like if you can do that, which I was able to do, that is why a Ron Howard or a Robert Zemeckis hire an actor like me. Because not only do we have the acting portion, we know the technicality of it as well.
Now, what was it like working with Levinson? Because I've loved him. Diner was a movie I saw that and I loved.
I worked with him very shortly, but it was great. Again, it's preparation, and it's the way they command a set that. Ed Zwick just wrote a great book, and I think I heard it in his book. Ed Zwick I have never worked with, but I would love to. Great. But again, his book, if anybody wants to hear about acting, it's so fantastic. It's preparation. Same with an actor. Preparation. If you're, I think it was Zwick who said it. Somebody said it recently. When you come onto a set in the morning, you better have a pretty good idea of what it is you're going to do. You may not get it done, but everybody around you as a director needs to know that you're in charge and you know what you're doing. That starts the day. So it's not, again, if you can do sports analogy, if you don't have a franchise quarterback in that huddle, then it's all going to fall apart. Although they are the head coach. And then what makes those directors, all of those directors, what makes Levinson's greatness is his humor. He is just so human, and I only spent one day with him, but he was just so humorous and so just watching the way he commands actors and those relationships. That's true with Ron. That's true with Bob too. Really, really true with all three.
Now, since you've worked with so many great actors.
Yes.
You'll and a ton. I mean, it goes on and on your list, which you have to feel blessed about that.
Yes.
But how do you handle a situation? Because for every great directors, there's a crappy one. How is it?
Oh yeah.
How is it for you when you come from when you're like above all-star, you're like Hall of Fame with these guys, and then all of a sudden you get a guy who's like a double A. How do you handle that? You're a professional. But how do you handle that as an actor? Because sometimes you must sit there in your head and go, wait, he's just not doing it right. How does an actor handle that? Because it must be very odd when you've had the opportunity to work with so many people. How do you compensate for that? How do you up your game when sometimes the direction may be wrong with your instincts, but it's the director's game?
The answer, again, is graciously. You do recognize it very quickly. You do. Particularly in television, you go and you realize, lots of times you realize, well, they were a great cinematographer, they were a great this. They don't necessarily know a whole lot about acting. But they don't have to. That's my job. So as long as they, in their gut, recognize that they have their talent and don't think they know a whole lot about acting. And I remember it may have been on some show I was on. I think I asked the director, and he was the director of photography. And he was great. I mean, like Academy Award-winning director of photography. So I asked him when I first met him on the set, and I said, "So how do you like to work? It was me and Giancarlo Esposito. How do you What do you do as far as directing the actor?" He goes, "You mean for the acting part? You think I would direct Geoffrey Blake and Giancarlo Esposito? No, I know what you know. You do what you do. That's why you're here. I'll make you look good." So that was honesty. That was great. So you can't, it's just, okay. An actor's job is to adapt to whatever the situation is. Whether that person is Robert Zemeckis, no, there's very few Robert Zemeckis. Whether there's Ron Howard, as long as it's done with respect and it's done with humor, we as actors know when a director is covering and is just being an asshole to be an asshole. Smell that from young actors won't, but as a vet, we smell that from 100 miles away.
Now, give me some stories about some great times you've had on sets? Like, I saw you did Monk, and were you in scenes with Shalhoub? Because everyone says Tony Shalhoub's the best, and my wife watches it all the time, and I started watching it like a few years ago, and I know a lot of people have been on it, and it blows me away the job he does. Like, that's like a perfect role. And Steven Weber was on the show, and he knew, of course, Tony from Wings, and he's just like...
You're all my best. Weber's one of my dearest friends, too.
So tell me, what was it like doing a show like that? When you work with someone he's going to knock it out of the park. Like, it's must be amazing as an actor to go on a set like that.
Shalhoub was amazing. It was amazing. It's interesting because it's a pretty highly visible episode, and it gets run it's a Thanksgiving show. So it gets run like crazy. So every Thanksgiving, wherever I am, somebody has just seen this show. In the supermarket, they go, "Oh, I just saw you on Monk." And it was a great fucking character to put my character to play. I played a homeless guy. And we shot it. It was the 3 homeless guys going over to Thanksgiving. Instead of 3 wise men, it was 3 hobos. And Tony, with all of his neuroses about being, germs and everything, it was the biggest nightmare you could ever imagine. But super fun to play, And the fun thing I remember on that show is because I was dressed, we were shooting in downtown L.A., down in Skid Row, basically, and these alleyways, and I was dressed as I looked like a fucking homeless dude, just the teeth, I would go out and panhandle on lunches. And I would see how much money I could make from the guilt-ridden businessmen downtown. Which approaches worked better. The homeless veteran worked best. And these guys are obviously stupid enough that you do my math, you do Uranized math, we had no wars. There's no way we're veterans. But we're not Vietnam vets.
So give me some of your roles that you've really enjoyed, because you've done so much. I mean, it's the TVs. I mean, is there some roles you've done really enjoyed, and is there some actors that you sat there and you were just blown away that you got to be in a scene with them or work with them? Because that's, as an actor, you all have your people you look up to and your mentors and stuff like that. And when you meet one of them, it must be such a great feeling.
It is. And I've been blessed to have a lot of them. I gotta say, there's some actors though that when you just, the connection sometimes, Giancarlo Esposito is a perfect example. He's such a giving actor, but he's so phenomenal. And he's so present, and he's so alive, and you have to be on your game. You have to be. And the first moment we sat down, he came in, and he just commanded the set. He demanded that we have rehearsal time. And he just, we were reading off the little pages, and he looked up and goes, "Oh, are we going to have some fun?" There was just an immediate connection of understanding that we both like to play against the grain a little bit. We like to play opposites a little bit. And it became, the work we did, it was phenomenal. So he's a perfect example of an actor. You just go, I can't wait to act with this guy. Ed Harris is always just fun to watch act. When we were doing Apollo 13, I remember specifically I was standing next to Andy Milder. I don't know if you've had him on, but you should put him on your list. Andy Milder and I were standing there, and I think I don't know if it was Wayne Duvall. Somebody else was standing. Oh, Ray McKinnon. And it was the scene where we're waiting for whether they're going to live or die or burn up in the atmosphere. Kind of the big, story alert there. Spoiler alert, I think everybody's seen it. And knows the ending. And so we're waiting, and then suddenly we hear, Houston, we hear Tom's voice break through. And everybody stands up and cheers in Mission Control. We're hugging and going crazy. I look over my damn shoulder, and he's literally right behind me. And I see Ed do the opposite. He sits down and gets very quiet. I see Ron see this happening, taps the DP, the second camera DP on his own, pointing to Ed sitting down, and then pushing in, unplanned, on Ed sitting down, while everybody else is chaotic around him and exuberant. And I I turned to Andy and I think Ray, and I said, "Fuck him." I go, "Harry, look at him. He just got a fucking Oscar nomination just by that choice alone. He's fucking great in the movie. He's great in everything. But that's a choice. That's what makes him Ed Harris." And then Tom is amazing. Paxton is amazing. Always great. Again, Paxton I love working with because he's just the opposite of the kind of actor I am. So it's fun to work with that. Jeffrey Dean Morgan is amazing. You know, the older gents that you see, you just can't. Larry Pressman, when he was young, he was a mentor. You know, Martin Sheen was a huge influence in my life in so many ways.
Now,
so
as you say, in your career,
yes,
is there any roles you missed out on that you thought you should have got? I mean, there's some, you know, any actor will say, we walked out of the audition, we nailed it, and then we don't get to call back and we're like, what the fuck? Like, has that ever happened to you where you said, man, that was my role?
Yeah, because I was told by the guy who created it, it was my role. And he wrote it for me. And then he had this concept of what this character was going to be and how it was going to be and what it was. And it was going to be like this character actor who changes every week and he goes into these different circumstances, and that he had seen me in things. So he wrote it literally for me. And a chameleon. That was this big chameleon. And that's what I've, prided my career on. And I tested for it. I went there. I was all prepped to get it. And then the network went, no, we're looking more for somebody who is really Matt Dillon handsome or Rob Lowe handsome, and we can put on the cover of teen magazines. And it was more James Dean than Gene Hackman. And that was 21 Jump Street.
Okay.
And it was Johnny Depp. So, which became a huge natural cold. That made Johnny Depp a huge star. So that was definitely one. And then if you go back and watch 21 Jump Street, the consolation prize is I got the guest lead of the first episode of a character named Geoffrey. That's kind of a knife to the network. What else that I wish I had gotten? I was cast in Saving Private Ryan. And then it was the same time as I was shooting Mighty Joe Young. And the schedules didn't work out because the mechanical monkey kept breaking down. And so I had to drop out of Saving Private Ryan. And to Max Martini's good fortune, who I had done Contact with, he was the other guy in the contact scenes with me and Jodie, Steven Spielberg just went, okay, well then get me the other kid from Contact.
Here's some. I deal with a lot of business people, and I always tell these business people, because I know I interview a lot of actors, and I say, you guys don't ever bitch about rejection, because actors go through more rejection than anybody. I mean, you hear stories, and I've heard stories where people have had a series and they don't work for 3 years. What has kept you going? Is it the love of the craft? And you've done it. Have you ever had self-doubt and thought, I want to walk away?
Not self-doubt. That the one thing I don't have self-doubt, never had self-doubt really, is because of what you said, because my career has always been grounded in my craft. So that, you have the craft, and you have, if you're not in love with the craft, fall in love with the craft of acting, fall in love with the discipline of the craft of acting, and you will be happy and you will be driven. That's true. Have I had rough times where I wasn't making enough money and blah, 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 blah? Absolutely. Did things, I didn't act for 5 years. But it was just the opposite. It was good fortune in that for 5 years, my wife and I became like the hottest writers in town. We had written a spec. People loved the spec. Before we knew it, 10 minutes later, we were signed by CAA, blah, 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 blah. And we were, for 5 years, we just wrote. And I didn't have time to act. But I missed it. desperately. So I went back to acting, mostly. I'm an actor. I'm not a writer. I realize that. I'm good at it, but it just still doesn't feed me the way acting does. So it has to, if you're an actor. And when you're an actor and you realize you're an actor, that's what you are. And don't apologize for it. I mean, a lot of people think we're this, we're that. We're craftsmen. You know, and a few of us are artists. I'm not saying in that category. There are artists, you know, there's some actors that are just, you know, Daniel Day-Lewis. That guy's an artist. And, you know, Meg Ryan's a comedic genius. So, yeah, Meryl, obviously. We will give her. So, no, I haven't. I'll never give up. You know.
Now, looking back at your career, what are you proud of? You know, you can sit there. You probably know Scott Cohen, and Scott Cohen was on a few weeks ago, and he said,
how do I know Scott?
He's a bunch of stuff, but he said, you know, what made him proud was through his craft, he was able to put his kids through college. Okay, for him, that's something.
I'm doing that right now.
Okay, so, but what else? What has made you proud about your career?
We talked about it. People say, well, how do you judge your success? And I said, well, I don't judge my success by how much I've done, how many times I've done it, all of that. My proudest success is not how many times have I been hired, which is a lot. Thank God, not in the middle. It's how many times have I been rehired. That to me says, hey, I'm doing something right. This director, they keep rehiring me. You know, not just one movie, 2 movies, 3 movies, 4 movies. And again, you have to be proud of the work, but you also have to not be ashamed of working sometimes just to work. You know, I remember somebody said, "But you're in Forrest Gump. You just did. Why are you doing Renegade?" And I said, "I'm doing Renegade because Stephen Cannell asked me to. And the character's a blast. You can't be big enough. I can chew the scenery like crazy, and mostly because Stephen Cannell said, I really want you to do this part, and da-da-da-da-da, and he backed it up with a check." So he did really want me to do that part. So I'm proud of so many movies I've been in. I'm proud of Forrest Gump. Always proud of Contact. Love that movie. Proud of Apollo 13, Young Guns, Rated X. Proud of Godfather of Harlem. Love being on Hotel Cocaine just because it's fun and it's a blast. And knock on metal again, we get a season 2. But I guess most proud of is I'm here and I'm still doing it.
Okay.
And I'm still doing it at the highest levels.
One final question. And you covered a lot of this, but to you personally, you know, we can talk about, you know, the scene with Ed Harris. We can talk about this. But to you, just give me a few of your personal highlights. Not like you said, well, I'm proud of this movie. But what are a few of your personal highlights in your career when you look back and something that really made you go, man, this shit's good. I got it. I got a life.
I can tell you, I recently met with an agent, and it was the ultimate compliment of pride of what I do that he does. And the agent said to me, I just wanted to tell you that I recognized so many of the characters that you have played in this compilation. It was a compilation. It was so many of the characters that you've played. What I never realized was it was the same actor who played them. And to me, that has been the great blessing of my career, and in some ways, the great curse of my career.
Why a curse?
Because you don't have that niche. You don't have that thing that you're just known for doing. You're a utility baseball player if we're going to go for for the metaphor. You can do everything. And sometimes the business wants to pigeonhole you in such a way that they don't understand everything.
Well, there you go. Well, I want to thank you for coming on, man. Well, what's coming up? What do you have in the future? Anything coming up?
We Hotel Cocaine is again. This week will be the finale of the year, and then hopefully we'll be back in season 2. That we're hoping for. Then there's a major lull in this town right now. We still are recuperating from the strike. And there's an independent film I did that's going to start festivally. But it's, we're all of us actors are like, we don't know. They're not making anything. There was no pilot season. They don't do those anymore. The films have all been, the famous breakdowns are like usually 20 pages, like 3 pages. So, and I don't know, I don't get them, but that's the rumors. So yeah, I mean, I don't worry. I always work, and again, it's all relationship based. Goodbye, young men. My 2 sons are off. This is their studio, actually. So the answer is whatever is next, and I can't wait for whatever next is next.
Well, that's awesome.
There's certain people I'd like to work with this year. I'd love to break into the Taylor Sheraton world and ride a horse. Taylor, come on.
Kid from softball riding a horse. Anyway, I want to thank you for coming on. People, seriously, go to IMDb and look up Geoffrey Blake and go back and watch his movies, and you really appreciate his work. Go to my website, coopertalk.net. You can find 1,017 episodes on there. You can email me at coopertalk.net. Twitter, it's at CooperTalk. Facebook, it's Cooper Talk Radio. August 22nd, I'll be hosting my monthly comedy show, Speakeasy Stand-Up. The Soundplex Studios in Pennsauken is the hippest new venue in the area. We do comedy. They also have bands. We do a lot of great stuff there. So check that out. And yeah, so thank you for listening. I'm Steve Cooper. I'm only as hip as my guest. Don't forget, drink your water, eat your vegetables, take your vitamins, and I'll talk to you next time.